I must say, John Cena makes a fairly reasonable case. In French, he's even more convincing.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Pluribus. Today we're going to be discussing Pluribus Episode 6, entitled HDP. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. And we are going to spoil what happens in this week's episode. We're going to discuss it. We're going to review it. We're going to recap it. But first, we have to talk about the big reveal that happened this episode. Last episode, Carol Sturka looked inside a plastic bag and she gasped. And we all were left wondering, what is it that she saw? Obviously, we found out this week. But before we get to what she actually saw, I thought we should just take a moment and share some guesses that people sent in.
Yes.
decodingtv@gmail.com. All right. Charles from Eldersburg, Maryland, had a guess of, hey, maybe it's Helen's face that she saw there. I don't know how exactly that would work because she buried Helen. But Gordon wrote into decodingtv@gmail.com. This is my favorite theory. I think what Carol finds is unrelated to the substance that the joined are drinking. If you recall from the first episode, there's a sequence where the initial batch of the hive are shown swabbing their cheeks and then using agar plates to culture what is responsible for joining everyone together. My theory is that the substance they are drinking from is a form of agar that they require to keep what is responsible for joining everyone together alive within the bodies of humans. This might be the means to reverse the joining by starving them of the substance. Some agar gels have a pH that ranges between 7.1 and 7.5. Agar is mixed as a white crystal that needs to be mixed with distilled water to create the right consistency. The agar can also be in the form of a solution that has an amber color, just like the one Carol found, end quote. So that was a pretty good theory. Patrick, I know you like that one, right? The idea that it's like, oh, they're food substance and maybe they can be deprived of it and it can reverse the joining. So that was pretty good. Pretty good one. Patrick, anything else you saw that you thought might be worth mentioning, or any other thoughts on what was actually predicted versus what was actually found?
No, I tried to, I put it off as long as possible. You quietly messaged me like multiple times. Like, did you watch it? Did you watch it? Did you watch it? And I'm like, no, I just didn't get to it. And then I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast or to you privately, but like the TV I have access to over the holidays is just, come on. Like we're watching, the Macy's Thanksgiving parade on that. We're not watching Pluribus or Stranger Things on that thing.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for sending in your theories. Of course, you can also email us at decoding. You can always email us at decodingtv@gmail.com or comment at youtube.com/@decodingtv. At the end of our conversation today, we're going to get to like a bunch more of your emails and feedback. So always love to read people's thoughts on this podcast as well as the show Pluribus. But of course, for those who are curious, we did find out that the thing that Patrick Klepek, first of all, Patrick Klepek earned a lot of points this week. Like Patrick predicted multiple things that happened in this week's episode of the show Pluribus. So like he's getting a lot of credit in my book. But we did find out that the thing that Patrick Klepek said would be the least interesting response or the least interesting answer, dead bodies, was actually what Carol Sturka found at the end of last week's episode of Pluribus. So all that said, Patrick, let's talk about our overall thoughts of this episode and then dive into what happened. What do you think of Pluribus episode 6?
I am still pretty high on this show, but I'm increasingly worried that when Pluribus was announced, it was announced as a 2-season order. And I think that's important because the pacing of this show now suggests to me, and we'll see what happens by the end of this season, but given the state that we are in, what we've watched so far, what could reasonably be accomplished at the pace that the show is moving at, which is pretty glacial, is that we are watching part 1 of Pluribus, and that season 2 of Pluribus, like this was conceived as a 2-season show, and creatively this is fundamentally different than Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, in which I found those seasons, despite having a meta-narrative, like a larger plot that's moving along, there were seasonal problems to be solved, like arcs that were very satisfying, that got you very excited about what came next. And I'm worried where we're going to end up with Pluribus season 1 is probably a really awesome like cliffhanger. Like I'm convinced that there's gonna be like I can't believe that's where we're ending, but one that will be less satisfying than had this been constructed as let's do a season, let's imagine there could be more. It just feels like It feels like it's going to be
Yeah.
a sort of unsatisfying, or has to be seen as 2 seasons to really understand what they were going for. So again, I'm still very high in the show. I'm willing to give it patience. Because, and it's less I'm giving it patience as much as like I'm enjoying the pace. I'm not finding that part irritating. But as I think about the show, how others might react to the show, I think the show is opening itself up for some pretty legitimate criticism over its pacing and what it will feel like when this season comes to a close.
Yeah, I completely I completely 100% agree with you, Patrick. I think I mean it's a bad sign when you're already thinking, hey, 3 episodes from now, I think we're going to be pretty unsatisfied, and I feel exactly the same way. I think I will be shocked at the rate that we're going. I will be
Mhm.
shocked if we get to the end of season 1 and feel, wow, what a satisfying season of television. Like I do not think that that's what's going to happen. I think you're right. It will be a massive cliffhanger. I think it will feel like the story is incomplete. I think it's going to be a long wait for Pluribus season 2. And so I'm not looking forward to that. Now, hey, maybe we're wrong, and that's going to be fun because Patrick and I usually suck at predicting things, but I don't know. I'm not looking forward to it. Okay, here's how I think about the show at this point. Obviously, Ray Seahorn is awesome. Uh, it's like watching someone do the same magic trick each week. This is what the show has become for me right now. It's like watching David Blaine, put a spear through his arm every week and then pull it out and he's unharmed, right? Like, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, okay, like the first time you see it, you're like, wow, that's incredible. I can't believe they did that. And then the second and third time, you're like, okay, that's still pretty good. And then the seventh time, you're like, yeah, okay, that's cool still. Um, I didn't come here to see just that. Like I came here to see other things. Like I was hoping there'd be some kind of narrative or other tricks. And the trick in this case is just showing what society is like with the hive taking over everything, right?
Mhm.
Showing a completely empty Vegas that's just abandoned and it's like, wow, I've never seen, amazing. Oh, seeing everyone kind of get up and act in concert with each other in a way that they never would have. It's like, oh wow, cool. But it increasingly feels like just the same trick over and over again. Still amazing to watch. Still cool to watch. Still grateful to watch it. The big issue is that Carol as a character, the way the show is treating Carol is pretty rough. And what I mean by that is Carol has spent most of the show thus far, right? We are 6 episodes into this. Carol has spent most of the show behind the other characters and the audience, right? She has spent most of the show discovering things that everyone else already knows. And that's just like a pretty rough, uninteresting place for a character, in my opinion. Now, Ray Seahorn makes a lot out of it and gives us a little bit of some emotional moments. Like the show at least tries to do something with that, right? And I do think that that is cool. Like it makes her behindness into something that is like character building for her, and I think that's cool. Um, but it's just a rough place for a character to be. And also, we have this other guy now from Paraguay who we are already like way ahead. We're so far. He's behind Carol, and we're like way ahead of that guy in terms of where his understanding of the world, right? So like, um, but the show just doesn't seem really concerned about addressing any of those concerns. It's just like, I'm going to take my time. I'm the show. I'm going to take my time and reveal things the way I want to reveal them, even if it's really, really slow. So yeah, I'm in a very mixed place on the show right now, which is like, oh, it's so cool and dazzling technically how they did this, and then also like Carol is behind again. Like Carol's behaving this way again, like she's just catching up again. It's just uh I find it to be a little frustrating. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm of two minds. One, I do like, but so part of my ability to predict part of where the show is going is, again, because I think this is Vince Gilligan's genre background. Like he knows the tropes, and so I like a show that still deploys the trope and then acknowledges it. Like the fact that the show defangs the uh
Right.
immediately acknowledges, like, yep,
Yes.
like 100%, like those are human body parts, we're processing them, like that's good. I like when a genre show, it can then do something more when it
Right.
acknowledges a trope and then like, hey, let's get past the trope part, let's like dig into what that is, and we'll get into that as we discuss the specifics of the episode. But I can't help but watch this show and sometimes think about one of my other favorite sort of apocalyptic narratives, which is Station 11. Like one of the greatest shows of all time. Like I think I might be willing to go there. Like I
Definitely of the
adore,
post-COVID, period for sure.
yeah,
Right?
I adore that show because of its view of what would society be like in the midst of an apocalyptic event. There's more people in Station 11. There's more characters to play with, but it's like a pretty. It doesn't say everything's gonna be great, but it does like people would try to band together and like help each other, and there's complexities along with that. And I found like a really interesting take on a less cynical, negative take on what would happen in an event like that. Like Pluribus, like is like pretty cynical and negative. Like so, people just be selfish and do what they wanted to do, not try to help others. And I don't think that it's made a credible argument for why I guess if there's 12 people total, like the 10 people along with our friend in Las Vegas, why those people haven't made an argument for why they're doing what they're doing. Carol's making a poor argument for what she's supposed to be doing. And I just don't,
Right.
I kind of just don't really like, and I don't mean like in terms of like I'm having trouble with the cast of characters that we have,
Right.
I guess
Yeah.
is what I'd say. And that is
Yeah.
not a exasperation with Carol as much as there are other people like could be part of this story and they're just not present. And the show is going out of its way to remove them. And I'm sure that will change, but I'm growing impatient with the singularity of the focus on Carol. And even then the show's just too in love with some of its own bits. Like, haha, like we're going to listen to the voicemail again. Cut away, dude. Like cut. Like I don't need to listen to that voicemail for a fifth time. It's not creating tension. It's not funny anymore. It feels like it's wasting my time on something very self-indulgent by the show. And I loved it in the previous episode, but the 2 times I have to listen to it while she's like waiting to see an answer on a billboard in Vegas, I'm done. Like I don't like. And we never even
Wow.
acknowledged how cool it was an Easter egg that it was a character from Better Call Saul. Like it's great. I don't want to hear it anymore. So like those are the parts of the show is lose. I think you and I are losing the thread in different ways. And
Yeah.
it makes me I'm still overall much higher on the show, I think, than
Right.
you. But I'm also worried that it's in danger of crashing out and it's just going to be me at the end. That's
Yeah,
where I feel right now.
We'll find out. That's what's so exciting about following us along on Decoding TV here. But let's talk about. There's a bunch of revelations that happened this episode.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. We find out it's dead bodies. She finds us it's dead bodies. She makes a tape, and she's gonna get proof, and she's gonna drive to the place that she can easily get to, where she knows one of the other unjoined are Las Vegas. We cut to Las Vegas. There is an elaborate card game being staged for Kumba Diabate, one of the immune individuals from Mauritania. And he's kind of playing a Casino Royale, James Bond style card game. You know, I think this scene is emblematic of some of the issues of the show, which in the sense that it goes on for way too long, in my opinion. Like we already understand everything about what the show is trying to like. It could have accomplished what it was trying to do in a fifth of the time. But it often feels like the show is so enamored with its ability to do this stuff that it's like, let's just let this play out in a really long, elaborate way.
When the guy broke character, the scene should have ended. Like that was
Mhm.
long enough for us to understand what's going on, but then it goes
Right.
on for another 5 minutes.
Right. And for those who don't know, by the way, the idea is that they were trying to make the best poker hand, and one of the characters had a straight flush, and the other character had a royal flush, which is the highest straight flush that you could get. It is the most highest ranked hand that you can have in that game, and so Kumba wins the card game. But shortly thereafter, everyone leaves, and I do have to say that's a cool moment because everyone kind of recognizes at the same time, oh, something's wrong, and it's because Carol's on the way. So I like that it's like Carol's like this force that is coming into town, and everyone needs to be like, oh, well, we we can't stick around for this. So anyway, they are staying at the Westgate Hotel, which is the famous hotel that Elvis stayed in the movie Elvis, and also in real life. And the hive clears out before Carol arrives, and she's very excited. She wants to reveal all this information, but before Carol can reveal her information, Kuba explains he already knows what's going on. And he plays a tape in which John Cena explains that the hive cannot kill any living thing, and that includes plant life.
Because when we say any life, that includes plant life. We can't harvest wheat or corn or rice.
Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, Patrick Klepek, but I immediately, when I saw this reveal in Pluribus Season 1, Episode 6, thought of the 1999 film Notting Hill. Are you familiar with that movie?
I probably saw it at one point. I have not. It's been far too long for me to pull too many specifics of it, but please continue.
Okay, well, we find out during the video in Pluribus Episode 6 that the hive cannot kill any living thing, right? And that includes plants.
Right.
That includes...
Which was an open question. That was something we were
Right.
wondering about. Yeah.
Right, which creates obviously a massive issue in how they're going to sustain life. Of course, they are able to harvest plants that naturally fall onto the ground, and other plants and vegetation that has recently died, and other people and animals that have recently died. They're able to harvest those and eat those. But of course, I thought about the 1999 romantic comedy Notting Hill, starring Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. And there's a brief sequence in which Hugh Grant is trying to date other people that aren't Julia Roberts. We've all tried this. It doesn't work very well.
My wife gave me permission. You know, it was like, give it a shot.
To date women that aren't Julia Roberts, and it doesn't go well for Hugh Grant. And at one point, he meets a woman who is offered. They're having dinner together, and she's offered some meat, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't take that. I'm a fruitarian." And he says, "What's a fruitarian?"
What is a fruitarian exactly?
We believe that fruits and vegetables have feelings.
And at that point, this explanation follows.
So we think cooking is cruel. We only eat things that have actually fallen from the tree or bush.
According to the fruitarian in Notting Hill, we believe that fruits and vegetables have feelings, so we think cooking is cruel. We only eat things that have actually fallen from the tree or bush that are, in fact, dead already. End quote. So you've heard it here, folks. You've heard it first here, folks, on Decoding TV. Pluribus was inspired by the fruitarian in Notting Hill. That's what it is. I'm convinced that somebody watched Notting Hill and said, what if the hive was fruitarians? That's what they are. They're fruitarians, Patrick.
Well, it does make it just fundamentally, from a sort of world building perspective, more interesting.
Yes.
Like, to take it to an extreme conclusion, right? Like, originally it was they won't. What we thought previously, based on the last time, like, part of this group got together, was, they won't kill an animal to provide sustenance for humanity, whether it's the joined or the unjoined. Right. But if you were to kill it, they'd prepare it. And we just sort of left it at that. And I was like, okay, well, that seems to present some problems, but, you know, maybe that's manageable, yada, yada, yada. Here, where, like, it's to an extent where we won't even knock an apple down from a tree. This is the stuff that I, as a genre sicko, like, this is, but then when they said, like, much of this won't play out for until over the course of a decade, I went, oh, all right, well, I mean, we'll see. I still think it's going to have consequences in the near term the show will have to deal with, but just from this is why you can't explore this in a movie. This is when you take a high concept like this and drop it into a television show, you get an opportunity to explore the idea further to a degree that makes you go, you know, amongst, like, really smart creatives, go, oh shit, yeah, huh. All right, so, like, a bunch of hundreds of millions of people died in the joining, and now hundreds of millions of more people will just stop. I assume they can't actually, like, quietly, like, if they realize, you know, let's say they do the hierarchy, right? Like, maybe the old and the naturally sick, that's like, well, they'll stop getting sustenance in order to prioritize folks who are younger and healthier. Like, I don't think they could kill those. Like, they have medicine available that could quietly sort of, you know, euthanize, like, those folks, but they can't harm each other, so they wouldn't do that. So these people just, like, sit in the streets and start, like, what is this is
right.
Even if the show never,
it opens up a lot of questions. Like, are they reproducing at the same rates as they were before? You know, like, all these other questions as well.
That's right. I guess no one's having sex. Oh,
yeah. So, so they harvest plant life, but even then, okay. So we learned that the liquid inside these cartons is something called HTP, human-derived protein.
Human-derived protein. And yep, that's pretty much what it sounds like.
Or at least it contains partly human-derived protein and other materials necessary for life as well. 1/2 pint contains 300 calories, so someone John Cena's size requires 8 of them per day. and each carton contains around 8 to 12% human-derived protein. But then it is explained that even with HDP, most of the world's population will starve to death within the next 10 years. So that is a problem that will need to be resolved. By the way, the hive promises that they will never feed Carol HDP or any component of HDP or anything like that. So that's good for her, I guess. Kumba then reveals that he and the other unjoined wish to help save the hive. They want them to not starve to death. So they've evaluated other options to try to help, maybe like robotic farming, but the problem is that the hive would need to program the robots that then harvest the food, and that would basically go against their programming. So it's a problem that will need to be solved. At that point, Carol finds out that there's a group Zoom that is happening without her.
Internet exists.
Yeah, the internet exists, which is shocking. But yeah,
I guess I thought about that though. Like, it's not shocking. Like, the internet in what sense? It makes sense for data transfer to exist, even amongst the joined. There would be reasons for upload, download, like things to be transferred like globally,
right.
Even if their knowledge is.
That's right. But also, like, you can just say, "Hey, one of the unjoined said, hey, please make Zoom work again," and they make Zoom
turn
work,
it on.
So
Which is...
I think that's completely fine. But Patrick, have you ever found out that there's a group text going on that you're not in? Right now, imagine if the group text has everyone on planet Earth.
The politics of many of my neighbors is, let's call it, questionable. But they are also all like big sports fans, and I know there's like a big group thread amongst like a bunch of the neighbors, ostensibly really about sports. I'm aware of the thread. They talk about the thread. I am not on the thread. And it's always funny when it gets brought up in front of me, because I figure at some point I don't want to be clear. I don't want to be on the thread. Like, I don't want to participate. But it's always a little odd where, like, you're talking about something someone said in the group text in front of me, and the group text is just people on this street. Okay, maybe that says something about how some people here view me. That's fine. I can live with that. So I've had Carol's disappointed, feels left out. I'm worried someone's going to realize at some point that they should add Patrick to the group thread.
You're
I don't want to be on it.
You don't want to be on it.
No,
you're afraid of being added onto it.
I don't want to have to like amidst, did the Bears win this weekend? Like, did you see what Pete Hegseth said? Like, thumbs up him. Like, I don't want to be part of it.
Patrick, I'm going to put this out there. In my opinion, this sequence settles the debate about Carol's likability. The show thinks she is unlikable. Literally, the remaining people on the planet find her unlikable, and they do not include her on the group thread.
Now, David, he is very specific in saying it was not a
unanimous
universal vote. It was a
majority. It was majority. The majority of people on planet Earth do not find her likable. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with her being unlikable, but like in the text of the show, she is unlikable.
Yes.
And the show is going to do stuff with. I'm confident the show is going to do stuff that's interesting with that.
Right, and
I'm
also
hopeful.
I'm glad that the show acknowledged.
Yes, she is
not only that, but also like the non-English speaking people were like a little pissed off that you didn't invite that, which is totally that fits into the
fits in with the themes of
yes.
like Carol representing white America or white womanhood in America or whatever, it all fits in with that. They're like, yes, that's something that somebody American would do, would exclude the non-English speaking ones. And I think I guess it's interesting to see people like defend. She's not unlikable. I'm exactly like her. And meanwhile, everyone on the planet hates her. Right. And it's like, okay,
my T-shirt saying that Carol isn't unlikable is raising questions on whether.
And I'm just like, basically, I think she is abrasive and unlikable and uncompassionate and unsympathetic, and that is okay that the show portrays her that way.
Which is again, this is different than the Skylar thing, right? Like when Skylar is not 100%. The show is not
depicting Skylar as unlikable.
Correct. That is
right?
a projection by the audience.
Yes.
Is, and here, not that you can't project yourself onto the character and folks that don't find her or like find her very charming or however you find yourself into her, that's fine. That's just watching a character and a television show. But I think you're right. It's important that the show is acknowledging she is isolated. People have decided to isolate her, and they have legitimate reasons.
They have legitimate reasons to
both
dislike her.
both the joined and the unjoined have all said,
Yes.
Carol, you're a little much.
There's the Hive, which is 7 billion people, and then there's 12 other individuals, and literally both parties are like, we can't deal with you, right? Which is very sad but very funny. But I like that Ray Seahorn has the scene where she goes in the bathroom and kind of just sits with the fact that no one on planet Earth likes her, right? I don't know what the show's going to do with this. I think I am afraid that the show is going to make Carol out to be like the virtuous one, and everyone should have liked her all along. And there's many reasons to think that the show might do that, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
So
They're just going to be chipping away at her armor, though, right? Like even having a scene where she's in the bathroom crying when there's a moment like when she's leaving the casino, the hotel, she rephrases, like she says something in the most abrasive Carol way possible, stops, admits that I do believe what I said, but I didn't mean it how you know what I mean? Like it is for the first time, especially in a post-Helen world, right? The first thing that comes out of my mouth like can't be cleaned up by Helen or like redirected by Helen. Like I'm on my own, and my most outward self is not going to be helpful for the saving humanity or even just like being invited to the Zoom chat. Or maybe they don't like me, but they let me sit there and like drink my wine.
I mean, fuck it. Yes, I did. I meant that, but not like it sounded.
Right. And she's by the end of the episode, she is unrepentant. She's not, by the end of the episode, she's not thinking to herself, hey, maybe I should change my ways. She literally says, fuck them. She's not talking about everyone at that point, but she's talking, she's like, she doesn't care what anyone else thinks. There is something admirable about that. Like, at least she's sticking to her guns, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the next morning, Kumba reveals that he has discovered that they cannot turn immune people without their consent because they need stem cells. And you can only extract stem cells from humans with their consent. And they have asked Kumba if he would like to be turned. And he says, regrettably, as of this time, I prefer not to. Carol then calls the phone, the one phone number that exists on Earth, and tells them that she does not consent. The Hive responds via Las Vegas sign. No stem cells will be collected from your body. Your wishes will be honored. That's what it says on the side. Now, Patrick Klepek is just crushing this week because on last week's episode of the podcast, Patrick, A, predicted that it'd be dead bodies. So that was right. And B, also said, hey, something I think we really need to look into is whether or not the Hive is going to interpret Carol's wording in creative ways, because they seem to have already done that multiple times. And here, I think you've hit it right on the head, Patrick, because we already all know, like everyone who's been paying attention to the show knows that they have at some point Carol's eggs have been harvested, like they've been taken from her for IVF purposes. And my understanding is you are able to get stem cells from that. And so my guess is that there's almost definitely going to be a situation where they're able to cause Carol to join them via the eggs, or like the provenance of the eggs will be important and in question somehow. And on the one hand, this is like a shocking and upsetting development. On the other hand, it's like, I feel like yet again we are I feel like we are ahead of Carol again, like, because I think most people can put that together. I mean, would you agree? Like, did you think of that? Let me ask you that.
No, I'm not convinced the eggs are like this shoe waiting to drop. I am convinced that, well, one of two things. One, I think it's interesting that the show. Actually, I thought it was kind of weird that the show didn't have a single character. Like, this was an episode in which the show's doing a lot of exposition and world building through like sharp naturalistic language between characters. And the question is never asked, well, did anyone choose, like, of the 12? Like, has anyone volunteered? Because I actually think that's likely to happen. Someone's going to say, especially like the woman who's like essentially her entire family is in the joined. maybe she just wants to join them. Like, why be the one person
Right,
who is
right. Who's
not
not in
part
the
of the
joint.
collective? I expect that to be something the show, deals with at some point. It's kind of weird it didn't happen here, but I do. Whether it's the eggs or something else, I guess what we're in alignment that I think there will be an incident, an occurrence in which Carol's stem cells are extracted, but they do leave the backup plan of, well, she has to consent, right? Like, even if they access her stem cells, can create a way of her joining. In theory, she has to consent, and I still think that leaves the slippery slope of what is consent.
This is so interesting because when I saw what happened in the show, I was like, oh, this is as clear telegraph as possible that the eggs will become important, because the phrasing they say is no stem cells will be collected from your body. Your wishes will be honored. So it's like,
I'm not saying it won't. I'm not saying it won't be
collected
true.
from your body. They have already will be collected from your body. They have already. It's the most legalistic language possible.
Oh, great. So all the fucking lawyers in the world survived.
Because they don't
Right.
say we are not going to turn you, right? They say
No, they
"We
said
will
they
not-"
want to do that.
Yeah, they said they want to do that. So it's like it's the most legalistic language possible, and to me, it feels like they're telegraphing this is going to happen. And if it does, I'll feel like, oh, yet again, we're ahead of. Like, we already know because you know.
I think this
Yeah, okay.
is. I think this is a byproduct of hyper
Yes.
analyzing a
You
show.
mean podcasts like Decoding TV? Yes.
Or just like going online, like listening to podcasts, like watching like hour-long breakdowns of like what happened in a show. I think it's very reasonable, in fact likely, that the eggs come into play here
Yeah.
and are a factor. And I think for most people, the fact that their eggs were harvested was something that happened in the show and they've never thought about again. I'm pretty sure if I
Right,
asked
sure,
my wife,
fair.
it would not come up. But the show is trying to play both sides, right? And then
Yeah.
that means if the show is going to play both sides, it has to appease both sides too, right? It has to be smart enough
Yes.
to make someone like yourself or us discussing it, knowing the show is going to be this show exists in a culture, and the culture is going to be hyper analyzing a show and trying to connect the dots. And so I think for a lot of people, like for example, my wife, like it will be a great shock if that happens. Like, oh my God, like, right, they did, like, okay, they could have done that. And I think it's very possible that you will go, I'm going to roll my eyes because of course that's what they're going to do.
Right.
And then it's on the show to make people
The
who
the
see
way
that
in
coming,
which that happens, like surprising.
it
or
has to be
interesting.
surprising
Right,
or
yeah.
interesting. And that remains to be seen.
Well, we'll find out. I did not think I would encounter any resistance from you in that regard, but I was basically going to say you called it, Patrick. Like they're using this.
I still take
legalistic
that.
language,
Like,
yeah.
that one. Whew,
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
All right, so then she's driving back to New Mexico. She takes her police car back. She sees all the like Lamborghinis or McLarens or whatever they are. I don't know what vehicle that is, but anyway,
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I love that.
That was good.
It's an 8-hour drive from Las Vegas to New Mexico, so that's what she has to do. Then the show does something wild, which is amazing, right? It shows 12 days, 12 hours, 43 minutes, and then the clock starts counting backwards. I'm like losing my mind, like what is going on? But then we are in Paraguay with Manuso Soviedu, and we see him experience the same events that we've already seen, but only from his perspective, which is very cool. I love that as an idea, right? Because these things are happening contemporaneously. So he's listening to the radio again, and he hears goes through all the radio frequencies, doesn't hear anything, but there's one radio frequency, 8.613.0, where you hear some kind of rhythmic sound. No explanation of what that is. It's kind of this regular rhythmic sound.
2 question marks though. It's
Yeah,
something he marked the first time, went back to once he'd gone through every conceivable signal. And I suspect that is going to play. I don't know what that means. Like, did he tap into the signal that was being? My first thought was like, this was a signal being broadcast, 600 million light years away, or
600 light years, yeah. Maybe. Like, yeah, you're right. Maybe a million light years.
Either way, I wonder if that is somehow related to the signal that was being broadcast that he's tapping into, and maybe that will, like, in the signal that was broadcast, can you also create an antidote, so to speak?
Maybe it's the competing signal, right? It's a competing signal with the antidote. And
warning. The signal goes out, and as someone on a different computer is like, don't.
Right, or it's like maybe like these are competing celestial beings that are like, oh, like I'm gonna drop my signal here, and then I'm gonna drop my signal here, and we'll see which one wins. You know, in some kind of bizarre celestial game. Perhaps we'll see. Okay, so then he is delivered the tape from Carol, and he decides to try and find her. So he goes home, packs his stuff, and leaves. But before he can, his mother shows up and says, like, "Hey, is there anything you need?" And he says to her very coldly, "You're not my mother. My mother's a bitch."
So good. I at that moment was as he's pushing his car down the road to get enough acceleration for the engine to start.
Well,
Incredible.
what is great about it is, and Patrick, I mean, I think we should get to this right now, right? Like, so I said we should start doing power rankings. Sympathy. Where's the sympathy meter for Carol versus the Hive, right? And I gotta say, my sympathy meter is way higher on the Carol side this week than for the Hive. Why? Because if people join the Hive, then they are consigning themselves to death, essentially, an early death. And the Hive does not have enough. The Hive does not have the tools necessary right now to ensure its own survival, and that is a really unfortunate place for the Hive to be. In addition, this ending points at something that I think is very interesting, which is everyone in the Hive needs to be cheerful and happy and helpful. But what if your personality is you're a bitch or you're a terrible person? Are you still you? Like, like you're fundamentally an unpleasant human being, but then you join the Hive, but the Hive cannot be unpleasant. So does that mean you're not you anymore? Like, isn't something about you that's fundamental to who you are now gone, even separate from the individuality versus collective? And I think the answer is yes. That's what we find out at the end of this episode. So I'm way more on the Carol side this week than the Hive side. What do you think, Patrick Klepek?
I don't think it's an argument, honestly. Like they openly acknowledge hundreds of million people are gonna people gonna starve. Like what are you gonna do? Like we feel bad about it. We truly do. I think once you're in that territory, however abrasive Carol is being, it's kind of a sticking point.
It's like,
I can sort of put aside the like churning up human flesh and like, okay,
yes,
like,
absolutely.
Look,
Yes.
you got to do what you got to do to survive. Like,
they're not killing these people.
No,
they're just...
it's culturally upsetting, but it's I understand the necessity of it. We converted all humanity and didn't really have a plan for how to manage all of the humanity part. Is like a real big flaw in the plan, which I'm sure who knows how much the show will get into the backstory of the virus, the creatures, whatever. But like, I assume this is the cycle, right? Is a self-sustaining propagation in which the resources of a place are exhausted until you can no longer sustain the populace, and then it is projected onward ever increasingly.
Now, presumably, what Manusos is doing is he is going to drive to Albuquerque. Like, that was my interpretation of the ending of the episode. Yes?
Yeah, because do we have an exact... He's in Mexico? Like, is that...
Well, no. Here's the thing. He is in Paraguay.
Right.
And Paraguay is in South America, and
So in theory, you can drive.
Well, I don't even think that's true because, I tried to look up what the drive is from Paraguay to Albuquerque, and Google Maps will not give you an answer. And the reason is because you cannot drive directly from South America to North America because of the Darien Gap, which is an 80-mile stretch of dense jungle, swamps, and mountains between Panama and Colombia with no roads. So reading here from Google, while a majority of the journey can be done by driving the Pan American Highway, the Darien Gap is an impassable break that requires a detour by sea or air. End quote. So it'd already be like a 25 probably closer to like a 48-hour journey if you could drive directly there from Paraguay. But then there is this matter of the Darien Gap. And so when it comes to pacing,
he's going to get in a boat.
Yeah,
I feel like this guy seems resourceful.
So on the one hand, I have both excitement and dread because on the one hand, it's going to be like, oh, that's really cool. We're going to see how he navigates the Darien Gap is my guess. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, it's going to take him another 3 episodes to get to Carol, isn't it?
See, that's the thing. Like, I think there's going to be a big revelation about this signal that like sets in motion the events of season 2. And I think there's going to be a real frustration when it's like, yes, it was a 2-season order. Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul seasons took longer, but were not prestige TV long. Breaking Bad was coming back like most shows, a year,
Yeah.
later, like when it was airing on AMC. And I don't think we're watching Pluribus season 2 in like
2026.
late 2026. And
Yeah.
that's going to be frustrating for a show that is moving this, even if the pace is moving up, it's not, it's just not in that gear. So
I think the primary issue with the show is again and again, we are watching characters on the show discover things that we already knew or other characters already knew. And you can only play that card so many times, in my opinion, before it becomes really boring. Because we want, it's okay to like, oh, your main character didn't know that, haha, like, yeah, that's kind of cool sometimes, but like, I think many people like watching the character find out things that no one else knows. Watch the protagonist be ahead of the curve. Like, I think that's what is exciting about watching a lot of television, and this is a show that's literally the opposite of that. And maybe that's what the show. Maybe that's going to be the point somehow of the show. Maybe I'm open to that. But so far, it's been not great seeing Carol just so fucking far behind. I mean, there's an email that was written in that was very much along these lines. Christoph from Germany wrote into decodingtv@gmail.com. I think Pluribus did its world and character building in the first 2 episodes and then left us with a whole lot of nothing. Episode 3 was spent with Carol catching on to what we'd already learned in episode 2. Yes, of course they would give you a live hand grenade. They gave this other guy Air Force One. In episode 3, I did not need all the times of the Paraguayan to understand he is male Carol. Also, she continued her slow understanding of the situation. Why are you surprised that they would fix your house? I expected them to fix your house. That seemed in their nature as they're intrusively helpful. I wasn't on the Carol hate train until episode 5 when she did her videos still completely incapable of empathy. Something we already covered in episode 2 when her worldview clashed with the ideas of others. Should I now get excited for a Soylent Green is people style twist? And even if it isn't people, at this point, I wouldn't appreciate it. You thought it was humans? I tricked you. There's just no winning with this setup. The show has put me in such a bad mood that I couldn't even chuckle at the objectively very funny garbage drone scene. That is when I fully knew that the show lost me. David called this show generous filmmaking. At this point, it's very generous with my time as a viewer. I am done with self-indulgent silent human ballet scenes. I found it interesting the first time. Now it sticks out like feet in a Tarantino movie. I don't even think the filmmaking is methodical. There are many scenes that are longer than they need to be, dragging on, providing nothing. If it wasn't for this podcast, I wouldn't watch the show. Although I feel like I'm taking crazy pills whenever you start with, I really like this episode. There is just so much reverence for Vince Gilligan that it seemed like the show can't do anything wrong. I don't think I've seen a serious discussion where the name of the showrunner comes up over and over again. All the shortcomings of Pluribus are pushed aside with the trust that the showrunner will eventually make this slog worth it. He might, but as long as this is not proven, I would love the show to be judged on its own merits, not because of the name attached to it. End quote. Pretty rough assessment, but hey, Christoph, I'm getting there. Getting there a little bit. Patrick, any reaction to that?
I mean, obviously, I think we have dropped Gilligan's name in here a number of times, but I hope in most instances it's using it as like a touchstone with the previous work, as opposed to, I think early on it was like, yeah, of course, like I'm going to give this creative a long leash, like I'm just going to, based on how deliriously entertained I've been with their previous works, which doesn't make them a perfect artist, but it means that they've earned my trust. But at the end of the day, like, Pluribus is going to get a lot from me because I'm a genre freak, and like the idea that they're taking this high concept premise and turning them into a television show, I'm going to get a lot out of that on just a base level premise. I think where it's going to start losing people is where, what does it do from there? And frankly, I don't need it to do that much for it to remain like thoroughly interesting for me, but I'm not going to blame other people for wanting to get off the train at an earlier stop.
I do want to read an email from the opposite perspective. And so again, I guess we're transitioning into our feedback stage of the podcast. I do want to mention, by the way, if you are watching this on YouTube at youtube.com/decodingtv, hey, subscribe to the podcast. We cover shows that aren't Pluribus. We also cover TV news on the Decoding TV podcast. Check us out there at Decoding TV, wherever podcasts can be found. We did get this email from Rob from Edinburgh, Scotland, who writes in, really enjoying the discussion on Pluribus, and I have some thoughts on how you framed the discussion around Carol's actions and motivations, which I felt were largely ignoring key context. Not only is she 8 days into grieving her wife, but she's having to deal directly with the people she considers responsible for her wife's death. Moreover, these same people are in control of all the functions of a society that she needs: production and distribution of goods and services like trash collection. The hive mind have taken both her wife and her ability to grieve and process it in a normal way, all the while making themselves fundamental to your survival. I'd be a bit pissy with them too. I'm not trying to say she's not a seriously flawed character. We've seen her be very negative person in flashbacks, but she's really not been bad at all when you factor in that this is the first week after the shocking and unexpected death of her wife. End quote. Patrick Klepek, you sympathetic to Rob from Edinburgh's reaction to Carol Sturka?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I do think it's a failure is maybe the wrong word, but I don't think the show has done a great job of making her emotional state clear. And so I think it's so surface level with Carol because she has trouble opening up. Like the bathroom scene with the crying is kind of like or when she cries when she films and is like super high on drugs. It makes sense to like all of that reads correctly to me in that letter because that's how I feel and like that's how I'm responding to Carol. At the same time, the show on purpose is not giving you much interiority, and I think it's also reasonable for a viewer to at some point go, "Cool, like I'm good," or grow increasingly sort of distant from the character. I think I understand both perspectives.
Bob writes into decodingtv@gmail.com. Carol, I have a pet theory about the joined.
Let's go.
Carol is congenitally incurious, so I don't know if she'll ever investigate this, but we know for a fact that there is at minimum one rat in the hive mind. Now he's referring to in episode 1 that there's one rat in the hive mind. Other and all mammals can be infected. It's one of the first things the show depicted. Even if it's truly fatal to 99% of them, that's still millions of rats infected worldwide. Is the join's inability to detect sarcasm or idioms caused by billions of dogs taking things literally? Is their inability to lie due to integrating millions of prairie dogs? The humans may now be vegetarian, but what about all those obligate carnivores roaming around? Anyway, I think the coyotes were in on it the last episode. The hive mind is giving her some tough love, end quote. Now, Bob is not the only person that's written in about the subject. We got multiple emails, and the one that I think was most convincing, somebody wrote in and said that they think all the different animal species have their own hive mind, which would be kind of interesting because it does not make sense that the rat and all the animals of the world would be in the hive mind. Like, it doesn't make sense because then why would the coyotes operate of their own volition, digging up Carol's wife's body? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But what if all the coyotes had their own hive mind? That would make some sense. Right? What if all the rats had a hive mind? What if all the giraffes had a hive mind? Right? What the show is going to do with that, I have no goddamn idea. But it does. The topic of animals and hive minds has yet to be addressed, and I do think that the show needs to address it at some point.
Or just animals in general.
Yeah.
The idea of a rat hive mind, they could wreck shop. Man, like if the rats really wanted to,
ants, ants had a hive mind. They could take over Earth if the ants.
Yeah, so I think the joint better be hoping that the humanity's experimenting on the rats is not their own undoing.
This is a fun email. This one comes in from Adam, who writes into decodingtv@gmail.com. After watching episode 5, I realized that they were steering the way they're steering the premise seems like a revisiting, deliberately or not, of the infamous episode of Star Trek Voyager, where Captain Janeway decides to separate her merged crew members Tuvok and Neelix, despite Tuvik's, the merged character, pleading for her life. It seems to me that despite Carol's understandable desire to restore lives lost, she finds herself in a similar quandary as Captain Janeway. Should she value this new person less than the people sacrificed to make them? Would sacrificing this new person to restore the status quo be morally good, neutral, or wrong? My questions would be, do you think the show is setting up the joined to be the people that can and should be empathized with? How is Pluribus similar or different to the Tuvok situation? And in both cases, which would you pick? Separate the joined or leave them? Where do you think Carol will land on this in future episodes? Thank you for the fascinating podcast about a fascinating show, end quote. So, I don't know if you watched Star Trek Voyager, Patrick Klepek. I doubt you did, but there is an episode where the transporter device merged two existing people together. There was a guy named Tuvok and a guy named Neelix, and then they went in the teleporter and they became a third dude named Tuvix, like a combination of the two people.
Okay.
And so they're like, "Oh my, what a horrible tragedy! Like we have to fucking undo this," is what they reacted. But then at some point, Tuvix says, "Hey, I don't want to die. I don't want to be separated." And so it's a question of when two creatures become a new creature, like does that new creature have rights? Does that and in a way, by unjoining everyone, she's killing this other thing. And to answer this listener's questions, Adam's questions, I don't think Carol gives a shit about any of that. That's kind of my response. But anyway, it's an infamous episode of Star Trek Voyager, and I do think it has some relevance here. Patrick, any reaction to any of that?
So wait, let me see if in the Star Trek episode, it's incidental that this creature is created, right?
Right.
This new
It's like an accident.
That is the fundamental difference. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, joined. I don't give a shit. You did not ask for consent.
Right.
This wasn't like, we've come to Earth to propose a new way of doing things.
Right.
Line up if you'd like to be part of the joint, which I think is a possible conclusion of the show, which is, what if they break it, right? And then do people still have memories of that experience?
Right.
Like, do they maintain the collective memories while they be like retaining their individuality? I could imagine like a version of the show in which the two coexist, in which it's an active choice to become part of, the joined, and other people like want to maintain their individuality, and that's not what the joined proposed to humanity. They're dooming the vast majority of the populace out of a self-sustaining biological impulse, not because they offered a better way. I know they view it that way, but they view it out of a biological impulse.
It's better for a short period of time, Patrick.
Yeah, before he starts having to deal with the consequences.
5 wonderful years of being part of the joint.
I presume if you can unjoin it, you can join it again. Like it sounds like the way the show is setting it up, there's a world where it's a switch that can be like turned off. And I suspect that is where the show will eventually explore the notion of, and it makes me wonder if it'll happen sooner rather than later. Like the show is accelerating through genre tropes in a way that Severance, I know people like that show more. It's more popcorny, while also being very smart. But Severance also just ripped through ideas very quickly. It's like, oh, we're going to do this for, especially the most recent season. Like, we're going to do this for a while, right? Nope. Like, that was half an episode. We're moving on, going to the next thing. It would not, honestly, I'd honestly prefer this. I don't think it's going to happen. But, like, if Pluribus shot through the concept of, like, undoing the joining exceptionally quickly so that it could move on to something more interesting.
Well, the show has not shown it's willing to move through plot points particularly quickly, in my opinion.
No, I don't think it's going to happen by the end of season 1. But I'd wonder if, if it's easy to imagine that being an end game of the show. But what if in season 2, hey, like the show's not over, but like the basic premise of can we save humanity from the joining is over. What comes after that? Like that's a potentially pretty interesting show that gets away from the high concept premise and the world building and gets into very different uncharted territory. But I'm with you. I don't think we're, if and when it ever explores that, I think that will be in 2027.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.